Can we talk seriously about Cousin Eddie for a second? Am I the only person that doesn't believe that he was Alex's drug dealer? Or is it just me?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Your Honor, we're here on the State versus Jerry K. Rivers. This is State Grand Jury Indictment 2022 GS 4721. Mr. Rivers is coming around and is present with his counsel, Lawton Matthews, and he has been indicted for a single count of obstruction of justice. I have served a copy of the indictment on counsel, and Your Honor, if I can approach a copy of the indictment for you. Yes, sir. Your Honor, Mr. Rivers was arrested this past weekend. To give you a little background about this obstruction of justice charge, and obviously that's a very serious charge, and it relates to ultimately some of the spin-off investigations in the Alex Murdaugh matter. There were search warrants served on August 10th at various locations associated with Spencer Roberts, who has appeared before Your Honor last week. Mr. Rivers is a known and longtime associate of Mr. Roberts, and at one particular location, at Smoke Road, at the location that has that sort of outbuilding where they hang out and gamble, of course, Mr. Roberts was there, and Mr. Rivers was there. His cell phone, Mr. Rivers' cell phone, was plugged in on the charger in that gambling area. And Your Honor, the individuals that were in that area were brought out as the search warrant was being served. They were, of course, put in that location. They weren't arrested, except for Mr. Roberts, because there was a warrant for his arrest. But they were sat down in a particular location while law enforcement secured the scene and began the search, which they advised everyone. Clean out your pockets, and cell phones are all being secured pursuant to the search warrant, authorized to be taken pursuant to the search warrant. They went into that outbuilding where Mr. Rivers was, as well as others, Mr. Roberts. And in there, of course, as Your Honor has heard, they found what appears to be at least about 15 grams of purported heroin. The labs are still pending on that at this time, Your Honor. But that was in that very location. Additionally, after all of this ended, there was some crack found in the location near where Mr. Rivers was sitting. Again, the labs are pending on that as well. But the real reason we're here, Your Honor, is despite the fact that Mr. Rivers' phone was in the outbuilding on a charger, when it came time for law enforcement to allow those who were not being arrested to leave, but they were all clearly advised that the cell phones were being retained pursuant to that search warrant. Indeed, after the narcotics were found, another search warrant was obtained, which included cell phones. Mr. Rivers, who had been sitting next to Mr. Roberts while law enforcement did what it needed to do, got up and grabbed Mr. Roberts' cell phone and left the scene. Law enforcement, once they realized that phone was missing, went and found Mr. Rivers and approached him and had a conversation with him. And Mr. Rivers, and this would have been the next day, and Mr. Rivers admitted that he had taken the phone and that he had given it to Spencer Roberts' people. Law enforcement told him he needed to go get that phone back. A day after that, Mr. Rivers called law enforcement and said, I have the phone, left it in a mailbox. The phone that had been taken by Mr. Rivers, that was evidence at a search warrant scene, was an iPhone, but the one he returned was an Android phone. When confronted with this, Mr. Rivers pretty much said words to, you can't blame a guy for trying, or words to that effect. And he, of course, was arrested then for obstruction of justice as it relates to stealing evidence from an active search warrant being conducted by law enforcement. Mr. Rivers, additionally, Your Honor, as we look at his involvement in continued investigations, I've mentioned a very sizable quantity of opiates that is still pending investigation, but it was found in a room and Mr. Rivers was present. There was crack found where he had been.
How does this tie in with Alex? Creighton Waters said Rivers and Roberts were downstream beneficiaries of the more than $8 million that Alex stole from his clients.
And additionally, on top of that, Mr. Rivers is part of the investigation in as much as he's one of the individuals downstream from Alex Murdaugh to Spencer Roberts, to Alex Murdaugh to Eddie Smith to Spencer Roberts and other individuals who received substantial amounts of checks. And this is high five figures for Mr. Rivers of checks that he received that ultimately had their source from funds of Alex Murdaugh that are subject to multiple indictments at this time. That investigation remains pending.
Mr. Rivers, would you like to speak concerning violence?
No, sir.
Welcome to my channel. I am Sandy and this is Chronic Cases, where we discuss all things true crime. My honest opinion, if Alec was taking Oxy, I think someone would have noticed, especially someone at work. If he's standing in front of a judge, someone's going to notice that this guy's high. Anyone out there that knows someone that's had an addiction with Oxy or has an addiction with Oxy, there are tells. You can tell when someone's high on Oxy. The eyes glaze over, the speech is slurred, there's like no memory there at all. Falling asleep, not eating. In all seriousness, who thinks that Cousin Eddie helped murder Paul and Maggie? Am I the only one?
Somebody going to check them?
Yes, sir. They've already checked them.
They did check them?
Yes, sir.
That's official that they're dead?
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
The $50,000 a month that Alec was paying to Cousin Eddie for drugs, I'm wondering, was that money for blackmail? Or was it payment for running drugs? Does anybody wonder why Cousin Eddie would agree to, on a roadside, shoot Alex in the head? Well, $10 million is a pretty good reason. Who would just go and, yeah, I'll just pop you off on the side of the road? No. No. I think you can hear Eddie on the 911. It's more gut feeling. I cannot be the only person that thinks that Cousin Eddie took part in Paul and Maggie's murders.
I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you. Oh, and it might not have been you. It might have been the monster you become.
You have Alec writing him checks from 2013? Is October of 2013? These guys are distant cousins. I don't believe that. Someone show me some evidence there. So show me something factual. Show me something factual, and I'll believe that they're cousins. The cowboy gangs, those guys are all cousins, so I think that's where Eddie got the name from. Also, if you're cousins, how come you've never met up in person before? You only meet in 2010, and then you take that person on as a client because they were injured in 2007. So Eddie gets injured in 2007. Alec takes him on as a client in 2010. Case is settled in 2013. The company that Eddie worked for had to call Alec and say, "Are you going to cash the check?" Prior to the check ever being cashed, Alec was already writing checks to Cousin Eddie. So what was it for? It wasn't his settlement money. I highly frickin' doubt that Alec was taking $50,000 of oxycodone. Oxy. No. And no one noticing? No. I don't care how overweight you think you are, man. So Alex started making checks out to Cousin Eddie in 2013, October of 2013. His check for his injury settlement was not cashed until 2015. Explain that to me. What was he being paid for? Is Alec just one of those really nice lawyers that, you know what, I know you're out of pocket and you need some money, so here, let me help you out? No, he stole from all of his clients.
Generating millions of dollars in fees, that was not enough for you.
With so many clients who unfortunately have suffered catastrophic injuries and are unable to go about moving around the way we take for granted, to be able to show a jury those things instead of telling a jury about them, the benefit is unexplainable. There's absolutely no better tool in the courtroom than to capture that in video. I can't tell you how many times we have used your videos in mediations and seen the adjusters and the attorneys on the other side move to tears. There's just absolutely no comparison to what video can do. The best storyteller in the world cannot relay with full effect the way a video can.
All these people on these two exhibits, these were real people that needed this money, is that correct?
I'm sure they did.
Back to the cowboy gang for a second. These members of the gang are actually claiming that Alec is like the biggest drug runner going. And money laundering. So here's a question to you. Do you think Alec was stealing from these clients, or do you think that he was laundering the money by moving it around so often? Food for thought.
Attorney General, you mentioned Mr. Rivers and checks.
Yes, sir.
In what context are you referring to that?
So, as Your Honor is aware, there are allegations out there that substantial funds, much of which are allegedly misappropriated money, flowed from Alex Murdaugh out various ways. A lot of that went through Curtis Eddie Smith, and then they continued downstream to other accomplices that helped cash and launder that money. And that would go through Spencer Roberts, and Mr. Rivers was one of those. So far to date, the investigation has revealed in 2021 alone about $89,000 worth of checks that went to Mr. Rivers that he negotiated.
Anything further?
Nothing further from the state, Your Honor.
Let me know what you think. Again, we know that there are so many theories floating around, but in all honesty, what makes the most sense? You've got a few. You've got, okay, so Alec murdered them is number one. Alec and someone else murdered them is number two. Alec somehow paid someone. How do you think Alec and Eddie are actually involved? What do you think they were up to? Why the payments? Why the early payments? That makes no sense. $50,000 worth of Oxy a month? Not buying it. I don't care how heavy you are. Cousin Eddie is claiming that he's the fall guy. Possibly. Maybe that's how it was planned. In Alec's head. I think this goes way deeper than what we know. Again, please let me know your thoughts. Let me know your theories. Was it Cousin Eddie that did it? Why did he agree to the roadside shooting? Was there actually money coming to him from that $10 million? Was Alec paying him $50,000 a month for blackmail because of the whole boating incident? See, that doesn't add up either because the boat crash happened in February of 2019. The Stephen Smith incident? Is it possible that Paul was the one that was involved in the Stephen Smith incident? Eddie knew about it and he was blackmailing Alec, and that's why Alec was paying him money? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your theories in the comments below. I'm happy to chat about it. Let's discuss Cousin Eddie. Hope y'all are taking care of yourselves, and I will see you soon in the next one. Peace. Sorry. Hydrate.